The fire started in the old Morrison's Cafeteria building on 31 Commerce Street and was well advanced when firefighters arrived on the scene shortly after 2 a.m. this morning. Flames were shooting 60 and 70 feet into the air. 7 engine companies, 2 truck companies, 3 district chiefs' cars, and 2 rescue units responded to the early morning call. It took 55 men an hour and a half to confine and control the blaze. Firefighting efforts were hampered by freezing temperatures as ice formed on ladders and rooftops. The Morrison's building, which was in the process of renovation, was totally gutted. Codes and Standards began their investigation after daylight this morning. The exact cause of the blaze has not yet been determined, but the probability of arson is strongly suspected.
Well, we feel like there's a good possibility that arson is responsible here. We've not proven it conclusively, but we feel like from information we received earlier this morning that arson could be a very definite cause.
The west lane of Commerce Street near the burned-out building has been closed to traffic, and the investigation will continue. Sydney Kohara, WSFA TV News. Fire inspectors think the fire started with an explosion on the second floor of the old Morrison's Cafeteria building at 31 Commerce Street. The fire was well advanced when firefighters arrived on the scene shortly after 2 a.m. this morning. 7 engine companies and 2 truck companies, along with rescue units, responded to the early morning call. Hampered by freezing temperatures, over 50 firefighters worked for almost 2 hours to control the blaze. This morning, fire department crews began cleanup operations. The Morrison's building, which was being renovated, is totally gutted. Adjoining businesses suffered minor smoke and water damage. The exact cause of the fire has not yet been determined, but arson is strongly suspected because of reports that someone was seen running from the building just before the alarm sounded. Fire officials also say this morning's blaze has not been connected with the fire that destroyed the Leon Supply Company warehouse on November 7th. Sydney Kohara, WSFA TV News.
District 8 Councilman John Starr and District 7's Elise Reynolds advocated a selection procedure which uses the Montgomery Bar Association to narrow the applicants to 5 persons. Council members will have a chance to add names to that group, and then the council must select 1 person to be judged. District 3's Joe Reed proposed a substitute procedure, which would provide for more than 1 bar to comment on the applications, but not to eliminate anyone. And under Reed's proposal, the applicants would be subject to interviews in public. Council President Willie Peake said he agreed with the principle of interviewing judicial candidates, but he proposed that a 4-member committee conduct the interviews privately. Peake's proposal failed to get a majority vote. So did Reed's substitution. So by a vote of 5 to 4, the original procedure passed. The Montgomery Bar will review the applicants and recommend 5 candidates to the council, and the council will vote on the nominees without conducting interviews, public or private. The council will get a chance to test the procedure soon, because the municipal judge and the assistant municipal judge complete their terms December 28th. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News.
The utility originally filed for a $289 million rate increase, but on July 19th was only granted $208 million by the Public Service Commission. The utility appealed to the state Supreme Court, saying the amount is not enough. The Attorney General's office also appealed the decision on the grounds that $208 million is too much. Sources tell me that Alabama Power notified Public Service Commissioners last week that another rate hike request might be filed soon. The amount of that request is said to be near $150 million. Our sources, however, say that the request was postponed when it seemed a settlement might be reached between the Attorney General's office and the power company on the original case. Our sources say the settlement might be as follows. If the Attorney General's office and Alabama Power Company officials could reach a mutually acceptable figure in the original case, then both sides might withdraw their appeal to the Supreme Court. Our sources indicate, however, that the negotiations have not taken place and are only tentative. Power Company spokesman Steve Bradley did not deny the reports, saying only that the power company has not filed any new rate requests with the PSC. Bradley said the possibility of this is only speculation, and he said it's not good for us to speculate. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News.
The problem of selecting municipal judges came up at a city council meeting in October. Mayor Falmer proposed that the city create a second assistant judge's position because of the court's increasing caseload, and the mayor suggested the council appoint Randolph Reeves. District 3 Councilman Joe Reed objected, saying the council should establish a selection procedure before creating a new position. So the council formed a committee. 2 weeks ago, the committee presented its suggested selection procedure to the council. It involves a 10-day period for taking applications. The applications would then be submitted to the Montgomery Bar Association, where a committee would have 10 more days to narrow the applicants to 5 names. The council would then select one of the nominees or someone else recommended by a council member. Joe Reed disagreed with that procedure, saying the bar should not be responsible for eliminating candidates, and the council should have its own committee to interview the 5 nominees. Because of his objection, the council tabled voting on the procedure until tonight. Meanwhile, the 2 present judges are nearing the ends of their terms, and even if the council does agree on a selection procedure tonight, it will be difficult for them to fill the positions by the time they become vacant. So it may be up to Mayor Falmer to use his emergency powers and extend the judges' terms or appoint temporary judges until the council can agree on the appointees. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News.
Paramedics rushing to the scene of an accident or illness has become an almost common sight in Montgomery and other metropolitan areas. But just a few years ago, this type of emergency medical care was rare. It was almost solely reserved for the hospital emergency room. In an effort to increase the effectiveness of emergency care, the Southeast Alabama Emergency Medical Services Council and the Alabama Hospital Association is sponsoring a seminar for emergency department nurses and emergency medical technicians throughout Southeast Alabama. Ann Main, a registered nurse and program director for the seminar.
Sometimes you don't have 15 or 20 minutes to transport a patient, so something has to be done out in the field. And this is done from direct voice contact, radio contact with the physician to the paramedics in the field.
Emergency care treatment has saved countless lives in larger cities, both in the field and in the emergency room. But unfortunately, this is not always the case in smaller towns with community hospitals. Ms. Main says it's important for doctors and nurses to take the specialized training so more lives can be saved. Michael Jones, WSFA TV News.
Some of WSFA's most prominent newsmakers attended the celebration, including former Governor John Patterson and Mayor Emery Falmer and Governor Fob James, both of whom praised the television station's coverage of news events, past and present. A film highlighted some of those big TV 12 moments, from civil rights marches to Cartoon Carl. And the Auburn University singers stirred some memories with a medley of old TV themes. Some of the people responsible for getting WSFA programs on the air were there. Top NBC executives, including the legendary Fred Silverman, who called WSFA one of NBC's crown jewels. NBC Today show host Jane Pauley also spoke. Channel 12's general manager presented Huntington College with a $25,000 check, saying WSFA wants to put something back into the community which has helped the station prosper over 25 years. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News.
We have control over what we broadcast to the United States. The Russian television will be assisting us in covering the games in terms of covering first, second, and third. But everything, virtually everything, will be recorded and then re-edited in Moscow by NBC and American technicians and then transmitted to the United States in satellite. So I'm not worried about that, not at all.
Are you prepared to trade off perhaps a little propaganda to get out into the country and get some of the Russian culture as a part of your coverage?
No, we're not prepared to trade off anything for propaganda.
Does NBC hope that this will be as big a boon to their overall programming as perhaps it was to ABC in '76?
Well, obviously we hope it will help us, but the successes we've been making this year, the need for the Olympics to be the thing to start us in prime time, that need is lessening because we've had successes in prime time this year, and the company is beginning to build a program base, and this has been a good year for us. But you hope the Olympics will continue that momentum going, the momentum that we've already started this year. The Olympics always produce a few people who become known, as you say, a worldwide star. And with all of our research, we may think we know who has a good chance, and maybe we'll be right, and maybe we won't be. And you look for that during the games, and someone will emerge, and then you try and just cover every event, everything that person does, because the Olympics are just special. And it happens at every Olympics. Someone comes out of the Olympics known worldwide, which is the power of the Olympics and the power of television.
And you hope to be ready to take advantage of that?
We will be ready to take advantage of that. Not hope. We will be. Our whole production is geared to look for that during the games. And when you see that star start to emerge, you just move your coverage more and more towards that person and that athlete.
They've handled it superbly. I think that television has put the American public right into the situation. Has kept them informed and up to date. And you know, my feeling is that an informed group of people is, and an enlightened group of people, is a very healthy situation. I think they've done an outstanding job. All three networks.
Thomas Carty feels better today than he has in quite a long time. Considering what he and his family have endured during the past 15 months, it's the least he deserves. On August 31st, 1978, Thomas suffered a minor heart attack. He recovered from it and returned to work, but his condition began worsening. And in January of this year, he had open heart surgery. Complications developed, and as he puts it, it was downhill from there. The suggestion to have the heart transplant operation came from Dr. Greg Neese, Carty's cardiologist. The decision was not a difficult one.
I knew that the amount of time that I had left, was not going to be that much longer, and that this would give me more time to spend with my children and my wife, family, and just help us just be able to spend more time together, really. That was the main factor.
The donor heart was from a 29-year-old Pennsylvania man who was killed in a motorcycle accident. Carty spent 3 months recuperating in Richmond, but they weren't spent lounging in a hospital bed. Within a few days, he was riding an exercise bike. The day after returning home, he was driving the family car, running errands. He's going back to work January 2nd. There's really nothing he cannot do in moderation. He has to take a lot of medication, about 30 pills a day. This includes steroids to fight infection. But there are side effects from the steroids. He's gained a lot of weight, especially in his face. He calls them chipmunk cheeks. And there's some stiffness in the joints, but these are problems, he says, he can live with. It took a lot of courage and soul-searching to undergo the transplant operation, but Thomas feels it was harder on his wife and children than on him.
There's nothing that they can really do about it except, sit on their hands and hope everything turns out all right. They've watched real close and were really vigilant as far as, they were there every minute. I think it really helped me as much as any medication or anything like that I, took while I was up there.
Thomas, you've undergone an operation that few people in the world have, and it's something that not a lot of people would like to do. Has it changed your outlook on life and the way you live your life every day?
It's changed it from, I guess you might say, look in the future to a day-to-day proposition, really. That's the way you have to look at it now, I think. Every day that I can spend with my family, or my kids, every experience that we have together, has a definite meaning to us, really, or it does to me. My wife, just everyone, friends, neighbors, every bit of it has a definite meaning to me now. And I'd really like to say, if I could, that I won't have the opportunity to meet all the people, that took part in helping us with this operation, as far as raising funds or thinking about us, just praying for us, and stuff like this. And I'd like to say thank you to them if I could, right now, and because unfortunately I won't ever know, all of them, and they've done some great things for us.
The study shows that 33% of those polled are concerned about preservatives. 29% are worried about additives or chemicals in general, and 20% about sugar content. If you're worried about what's in the food product you buy, check the label on the packaging. All grocery products by law must carry 2 information labels. One lists the ingredients in the product, and the other is a food nutritive label. The information you're looking for can be found on the box or the jar or the can. This one is listed on the side of the box. The nutritional information gives you a percentage listing. For example, if you were looking for something high in protein, this has protein 2%, so you would be able to tell by the percentage how much protein is contained. The ingredients also are listed. Sugar is the first ingredient that's listed here, and that tells you that it has more sugar in it than anything else. You go right on down to the very least, and the last thing that's mentioned is vitamin D, so this product has less vitamin D than any other in it. One problem you run into is recognizing some of the names of the additives and preservatives in foods. However, a simple check of the label information will take you a long way in determining if the product's the one you want to take home and put on your grocery shelf. Ivy Berman, WSFA TV News.
The Municipal Electric Utility Association, representing a dozen cities who operate their own power distribution systems, is opposed to legislation that would give municipalities the right to take over service to customers in annexed areas presently serviced by another power supplier. The municipal utilities claim they have a vested right to provide service to all the residents of their city. They also say the profits from the electric services help offset losses in providing other services like water and sewage. Alabama Power Company, which also acts as a primary supplier in cities, supports that bill. The one group opposing the bill is the Rural Electric Association. That group says it's worked hard to establish service in the rural areas. REA contends that as the municipalities grow, they are ingesting desirable areas and charge that only boosts the cost to customers in sparsely populated spots. The committee must decide if there is enough of a problem to consider legislation. If so, a decision must be made as to what type of territorial legislation would be fair to all power suppliers. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News.
Can't tell the players without a program. That could be the War Eagles' motto this year. Sonny Smith is featuring a team with a new look and hopefully some more wins. Last year's team went 13-16, and every starter returns from that squad. It will be that kind of experience that will have to carry the Tigers the first part of this season. But if Auburn is to develop into a true contender in the Southeastern Conference, much of the help has to come from the freshmen, and that is a distinct possibility. Auburn had one of the nation's better recruiting seasons. Some rank the Tiger freshmen among the 6th best in the nation. In fact, one of those newcomers will start tonight. Alvin Mumford of Birmingham starts this evening, along with Eric Stringer, Rich Valvicius, Bobby Cattage, and Earl Banks. However, you can look for quite a few new faces to appear in this evening's game. Freshman Darrell Lockhart led all scorers with 16 points in the War Eagles' lid-lifting win against Texas Wesleyan. And Sonny Smith believes with a little time Frank Poindexter could develop into one of the better players in the conference. Just how long it takes those freshmen to develop will determine the War Eagles' success this year. Some early returns will be in tonight after Auburn faces Ole Miss. So get your programs early. It should be an interesting season on the Plain. Fred Albers, WSFA TV Sports.
I anticipate going to a few more banquets and maybe receiving a couple more awards like this. I kind of feel like a rookie at this, because I really haven't been into it that much.
Well, you'll get your speech before long and you'll be ready. What about football, postseason type stuff?
Well, I've accepted invitations to the Senior Bowl and the Hula Bowl. That's the only two I'm going to play in.
That'll be about as many as you need to play in.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to take too many chances. Possibility of getting hurt, and I think I can prove myself in those two games as far as the pros are concerned.
Staff. and hopefully that will be continued from now on, so that the people all over Alabama. This is a publication that's put out by your office here, the staff. The preservation report goes out, charged with the responsibility of operating the affairs of historic preservation for the Alabama Historical Commission and trying to take care.
The governor made the announcement of the pay raise in a memo to State Department heads. He told them that since January, the state has saved over $20 million. He said the savings are reflected through performance accounts by reduction in purchases, insurance costs, data processing costs, personnel costs, travel expenditures, and other efficiencies.
The other efficiencies include collection of $15 million in back taxes from out-of-state corporations. This money goes into the Special Education Trust Fund and can be used for teacher pay raises. The governor is counting on a 14.9% growth in the Special Education Trust Fund. Right now, that fund is growing at a rate of about 10%. In case the fund does not increase, Governor James says he will go to the Alabama legislature and ask for the release of $11.5 million in reserve funds. If this is not enough, then money from the general fund reserve will be requested.
What that is a contingency. What we'll do is ask the legislature to give the governor the financial flexibility to go into that if he needs to go into it. And there's really no way to tell at this time if you'll need, $6 million, $10 million, or $15 million.
The Alabama Education Association has been concerned that teachers did not receive a pay raise this year. No doubt that would have been the major topic at the AEA Delegate Assembly, which is scheduled to begin its meetings in Birmingham this weekend. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
As of the first of the year, some 50 elderly tenants in city-owned housing units in Montgomery were facing a $15 a month increase. The president of the Resident Council of Riverside Heights, Samuel Moore, wondered if there couldn't be special consideration for them. The Housing Authority spent 3 weeks researching the problem.
The option was to convert or transfer to conventional housing rather than locally owned housing, where the rents are computed at 25% of the total family income rather than a flat rate per unit.
So now all the elderly tenants on fixed incomes have the option to move from their city-owned unit to a federally subsidized one. The first tenant to do so is Samuel Moore. He says now that he's moved, his rent is lower and the quality of his living quarters is just as good. Paul Roth, WSFA TV News.
May I want to give you the rostrum here if you want some remarks to made. We're real proud of the Preferred Cities program. And as you know, the ADO office and this office and anything else from the state side will support your efforts in industrial and economic growth 100%. And as I tell so many people, it's not what we do to get to be a preferred city, but what happens after that time. So congratulations and wish you every success.
Thank you, Governor. We really do appreciate this. Of course, this came about because of the efforts of a lot of people, a lot of them here today and some who are not here. And we certainly do appreciate your assistance and assistance of the Alabama Development Office. They've been
18-year-old Jerome Vincent Berard was convicted of double murder in the April 1978 shooting deaths of 2 Montgomery youths. He was sentenced to die in the electric chair. Attorney John Capel is Berard's lawyer, and he says the death sentence should be changed to life in prison because the mitigating circumstances outweigh the aggravating circumstances. Capel also says the trial judge was wrong in discharging potential jurors because they expressed opposition to the death penalty. He also says that Berard had mental problems and could not appreciate his actions.
The trial court in this case was a case involving whether Jerome was insane. There was no contention that he did not do it. He did do it. Because of this, we have argued strongly this case should be sent down for a proper sentencing hearing.
Assistant Attorney General Jane LaCroix, who represented the state, says the trial judge did conduct the proceedings according to the rules of court. She did not agree with the contention that Berard is insane.
A quick decision by the Alabama Court of Criminal Appeals could be delayed. The U.S. Supreme Court has agreed to hear an Alabama death penalty case. If the Criminal Appeals Court does agree to a new sentencing hearing, there could be further complications. Circuit Judge Richard Emmett, who originally heard the Berard case, has since retired and moved out of state. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News.
The holiday spirit can work some wondrous changes. It has inspired Maxwell Prison inmates to cooperate with members of the Montgomery Police Department. The unlikely partnership is taking bicycles that look like this and transforming them into bikes like this. Bright, shiny Christmas presents which the police department's Youth Aid Division will give to needy children. The Riverbend JCs is a prison service organization whose members are fixing up old bicycles in their spare time. One of the inmates owned a bicycle shop before he went to prison. Another one has 7 children, so he's had plenty of experience patching up bikes. The prisoners think they'll have more than 50 bicycles ready for Christmas. The work stimulates the men and helps them feel part of the community. And it makes them proud to know that with each shiny bicycle, they've helped produce a bright Christmas for a needy child. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News.
The career of Senator John Sparkman spanned 8 White House administrations, starting during the Roosevelt New Deal era and ending with his last Senate roll call in October of 1978. When Senator Sparkman retired, he was the 4th-ranking member of Congress and the chairman of the powerful Foreign Relations Committee. Residents of Hartselle put on a parade and then a dedication ceremony at the new Civic Center. Among the dignitaries honoring Senator Sparkman were Mrs. Lillian Carter and Massachusetts presidential hopeful Senator Edward Kennedy.
Wherever I've traveled, I have found a common yearning among all people, white and black, young and old, businessmen and farmers, a yearning to make America great again. It was that commitment and ideal that Senator John Sparkman exemplified throughout his public career.
A bust of Senator Sparkman was unveiled and the Civic Center officially dedicated in his name. Senator Sparkman was touched.
And this has been a wonderful thing that you have done for me. I appreciate it more than I can tell you.
There were more ceremonies later at the Morgan County Junior High School, also to honor the man who authored countless bills during his years in Washington. The many bills Senator Sparkman is personally responsible for include the GI Bill. Sparkman also aided in legislation laying the groundwork for the FHA system of private home financing and the creation of the Small Business Administration. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News in Hartselle.
This was Senator Kennedy's first trip to Alabama since he announced his candidacy for the Democratic presidential nomination. Accompanying Kennedy on the trip to Hartselle was his nephew, Robert Kennedy Jr., his sister, Eunice Shriver, and television producer Norman Lear. During his opening remarks, Kennedy got a plug-in for Alabama food as he reminisced about his brother John's inauguration.
The Sparkmans were the organizers of the Committee for the President's Inaugural in 1961. It was Ivo who took special personal care to ensure that Alabama cuisine was well represented on the menu at the inaugural luncheon. I liked the food so much on that occasion that I've decided to have it again at the inaugural lunch in 1981.
After praising Senator Sparkman, Kennedy touched on some serious issues. He said bringing the economy back to health is his #1 domestic issue, and he expressed confidence in the future.
The problems we face today are no more difficult than those we faced and overcame at other crucial periods in our history. We can meet our housing needs. We can restore the vigor of our economy. We can end our dependence on foreign oil.
During his speech, Kennedy was interrupted by 2 hecklers believed to be members of the Communist Workers' Party. The same group confronted Kennedy last night at a speech in Washington. They were removed from the ceremony by Secret Service agents. This brought loud applause from the audience. Following the ceremonies, Kennedy met with a group of his Alabama supporters before leaving for Rock Island, Illinois. Michael Jones, WSFA TV News, Hartselle, Alabama.
This is a play Enterprise fans will long remember. Trailing 7-6, Eddie Faulkner calmly kicks a 38-yard field goal to give the Wildcats a 9-7 victory and a shot at the state high school championship. That's something new for our Enterprise fans. The team has only been in the playoffs twice, both times losing in the first round. But while the Wildcats may be short on experience, they are long on talent. Holding Jeff Davis to just 1 touchdown is no easy trick. But the Wildcats dominated the line of scrimmage in the JD game. That's been the Wildcats' long suit all year long. Defense with a capital D. Enterprise has 3 shutouts this season, and the defense has also come up with the big play. This has been a Cinderella season for Enterprise. Many preseason prognosticators envisioned a 500 season for the Wildcats. They're once again underdogs, this time against Vestavia Hills, and they may once again beat the odds. Fred Albers, WSFA TV Sports.
Enterprise dominated the line of scrimmage from the first snap. Billy Barnes buffed 12 yards on this play, and with the help of an unnecessary roughness penalty, Enterprise moved to the 12-yard line, where quarterback Kevin Maddox loosened things up a bit. He goes upstairs and hits Craig Florence with the touchdown pass. Enterprise leads 7-0. Enterprise's defense lived up to its reputation. Watch number 88, Linzel Chapman, on this play. The Rebels had trouble running the ball. And when Vestavia Hills tried to pass, it was Enterprise that did the receiving. Calvin Smith intercepted 2 passes in the first half, this one setting up the Wildcats' second touchdown. Once again, Maddox passes, and once again, it's Florence on the reception. Enterprise leads 14-0. But just when the Wildcats could have put the game away, the Enterprise defense had a letdown. Vestavia Hill scored in the closing seconds of the half. Philip Lee catches Danny Saltrick's 38-yard pass. The half ends with Enterprise leading 14-7. But the defense did its job in the second half. An offensive fumble allowed Vestavia to score a touchdown. The Rebels then elected to go for 2 points, and it was big Linzel Chapman who broke up the play. The Wildcats win the ball game 14-13 and are this year's 4A football champions. Fred Albers, WSFA TV Sports at Legion Field in Birmingham.
Well, we thought that they were going to run some kind of option, maybe pull it up and throw a quick pass to the tight end or something like that off of an option look and catch you looking for the run. We were even really scared they was going to run that quickie again because that had hurt us, you know, when we were looking for pass before. But in that situation, you don't really know. And the kids just came up with a big play.
This has been a great year for Enterprise. The team wasn't picked to do that much in the preseason polls.
No, it wasn't, and I don't understand it. I've been in coaching for a long time. Sometimes teams just gel, and this one did. They won early in the season. They won a couple of big ball games that after they'd gotten down, we were down 14-0 in the Pine Forest game and came back and won it. And it sort of just pulled them together. And they were a super team all year, an enjoyable team to coach. They practiced hard. They hustled every day out there in practice, and that's the kind of team you like to have, and they deserve what they got. I'll guarantee you that. They just put it together.
The Enterprise fans are the greatest around, man. It was just unbelievable this year. They backed us in every game. Our whole side, and it was just unbelievable, the people that were there. It helped us in the whole game. The defense was down. The defense was
Hey,
down
right,
in
Gary
the
Dale.
last 2 minutes, and the band and the fans, they just fired them up, and they got them. Wildcat band. They got them moving. That's what happened.
Congratulations, you guys. Good team.
It's a fine success story, the kind that we like to talk. Been promoted to president. Mr. G. Richard Shafto, our former president.
Ratings are good. You know they won't last, and that beautiful, beautiful grill. Every detail.
Great community we serve. Please accept this check for $25,000 for the establishment of a permanently endowed scholarship program at Huntington College for WSFA TV.
The proposals are part of the Alabama Commission on Higher Education's 5-year plan. That plan says Alabama's post-secondary 2-year institutions have grown out of expediency rather than planned development. It's for this reason that AIC recommends that a system of no more than 12 comprehensive community colleges replace the 44 campuses now in existence. The plan says while the 44 separate campuses might remain in operation, their administrative functions could be consolidated at a district level, and it would be based on population. This consolidation plan recommends a separate governing board be established for the new system. That board would be represented at the community and technical college level by an advisory committee.
AIC says its 2-year schools, such as Trenton State Technical College, would have to prove they are effectively servicing their area to keep from being phased out. There are, however, 2 colleges who are given little choice in AIC's plans. AIC's recommendations are to phase out Athens College completely, allowing its students to be absorbed into any one of 3 senior institutions in that area. Athens College has only been a state school since 1974, even then against the objections of AIC, who said it would only add to costs. AIC says its arguments are still valid today. AIC is also recommending that Livingston University be considered for a phase down from a 4-year institution to a 2-year school. And because of declining student enrollment, it says it might be considered for a complete phase down. All of the recommendations in the entire 5-year plan are still subject to the final action of the Commission at its final meeting December 13th. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News.
This document and others like it apparently support what Governor James has been saying about Alabama's colleges and universities, and that is they have enough money with which to operate.
This is part of a report delivered to Governor James which analyzes the finances of the state's colleges and universities. In part, the report shows that some of the schools have more than enough money to operate, even though some college presidents have told the governor they do not. The governor's financial advisor, Dr. David Bronner, prepared the report. Some aides to Governor James have reportedly said the schools involved are perpetrating a fraud upon the taxpayers. Dr. Bronner didn't quite put it that way.
No, my opinion is that there's a number of areas in which the legislature nor the governor could possibly come to a determination on their budget. I mean, it's totally impossible. You cannot determine from 6 or 7 of the universities what money they should have unless you know what they've got. And they do not, are not functioning under the accounting standards necessary to determine this.
Bronner calls the budget recommended by the Alabama Commission on Higher Education, quote, lousy. The governor calls it irresponsible.
Not only is there a problem with state funds, but there's also a problem with federal funds. I've been told by a source here at the Capitol that very soon Governor James will announce plans to monitor federal monies coming into the state of Alabama through the various state agencies. This monitoring program will not include Alabama's colleges and universities, because those institutions are not required to tell the state how much federal money they are receiving. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
Throughout the day, Prattville, Autauga, and Elmore County residents were invited to take part in what was called a Day of Prayer in National Crisis. 8 houses of worship in Prattville opened their doors to those whose prayers ask for the release of the hostages in Iran and for peace on earth. At the First Methodist Church, the Reverend Pruitt Willis summed up today's mood, saying surely these are the times that try men's souls. He announced support for the president's handling of the situation so far and asked for God's help in ending the crisis abroad. Reverend Willis says Americans have no real concept of a holy war, one whose justification is a belief in God. Then, in a moment of personal meditation, each of the 65 residents in attendance knelt in solemn prayer. Their thoughts on the future and hope for peace to light the world. Paul Roth, WSFA TV News, Prattville.
And since May of this year, the people of Alabama have used an average of 7.4% less gasoline than the same period last year. Now, the target was set based on the first 3 months of this year. And on that basis, I don't think there'll be any problem meeting the target.
You mentioned that this was a contingency plan.
Yes, the president has asked all the states to develop contingency plans, voluntary conservation plans to reduce our gasoline consumption because of the explosive situation in the Middle East.
Shortly after 9 this morning, Montgomery police were called to the scene of a shooting. According to police sources, Dorsey King Sr. allegedly shot and killed his 34-year-old wife, Ruby, following an argument. Sources add the squabble began last night and ended this morning with the woman's death. Dorsey King Sr. was taken into custody at the scene and taken to city jail. Police, meanwhile, combed the area in search of the 12-gauge shotgun allegedly used in the murder. 15 minutes later, the weapon was discovered in the house.
We believe she was shot with a 12-gauge shotgun at close range.
Has the gun been recovered?
Yes, sir. We've recovered the gun and have a suspect in custody at this time. Mr. King is in custody at this time.
The case is still under investigation by the Montgomery Police Department. Paul Roth, WSFA TV News.
The accident occurred on the I-65 bridge over Fairview Avenue around 2:30. According to police, the driver of the 30-foot United Van Lines truck says he ran over into the median. In the attempt to regain control, the truck overturned onto the roadway. The gasoline tank ruptured and caught fire. The fire spread to part of the cab and trailer as well as setting the grass on fire. The fire department arrived in force to make sure the accident did not turn into a disaster. Firemen began cutting into the trailer to find out just what was inside and to douse any flames they found. Trucks carrying foam were also on the scene in case the leaking gasoline caused problems. The truck contained furniture, and the two occupants of the truck were only slightly injured, sustaining cuts to their hands. Several large wreckers were also brought in to turn the truck back upright. In the meantime, the traffic in the southbound lane of I-65 was rerouted down onto Fairview and back onto the interstate. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News.
Well, Margaret Lois here has had her 11th birthday party today, and all of her little friends went out to the stores and they bought some presents for the underprivileged children that wouldn't have Christmas presents if they wasn't buying them for them. They've come down to turn their presents in to the Youth Aid Bureau.
Girls, what kind of presents do you have?
Tell them. Show them some.
Okay, we got mittens and hats, jeans, tights and jeans and shirts.
How do you know they'll fit?
Well, we're just getting the people that fit. They're going to pick people that fit them.
Who picked all these out?
We did.
Who helped you?
The Bunny.
You did it all by yourself?
Yes.
Is this a lot more fun, you think, than having a roller skating party?
Yes.
What about you? You're the birthday girl.
Yes, sir.
You would really rather do this?
Yes, sir.
You think you'd rather do it again sometime?
Yes, sir.
How old are you?
11.
I feel that the Shah has been a true friend for over 30 years with the United States of America. He has been a good person and a good leader for his country, so far I know. For over 22 years I lived in Iran. I was born in Iran. I have a little bit of information about the person. Him as a king or a Shah of that country, so far I knew, people were very happy. He provided as much as he could for them. Regardless, the people, when they asked me about the Shah and about sending him back home, I don't blame the people by feeling that way, because we have 50 people hostage that they're not treating them right in Iran. People have a heartache by the situation. I tell them that I don't blame them for what they feel, but I also tell them they should not judge harshly through a man which they don't hardly know. If you look through the history of the United States, or if you look through the news and everything else, you will find out that man has been good to our country. And that's the only reason I don't want the people judging, because the Lord says, thou shalt not judge.
Now, the scenes that people see on television every night of the thousands and thousands of people chanting in the streets, is that the true picture of Iran?
2 weeks ago, I did talk to my father in Iran. As you know, when you see these people in television, they are camera-hungry, thirsty people. They just As soon as they see the camera, they start shoving, hollering, and everything else. As soon as the camera is over, we never know what's happening behind it. You go a few streets in Tehran over, you will see the people living normally, and they go after their business day to day. This is just a few thousands of people have no work to do. As you know, that's over 40,000 of people, and 40% of people are unemployed. They have nothing to do. So they just rather go ahead and waste their time in that.
Do you think the Ayatollah Khomeini will stay in power much longer?
No, sir. I don't believe he will stay in power. These people are not made to rule a country. There is no way in the world they could stay in power. For a person to run a country like the way Shah did, or the Senate of Iran would do, they have experienced. They know about the rule and regulations and the law of all nations. They will respect them. That's why everybody turns around and respects them. So therefore, I don't believe his power will be lasting too long. As a matter of fact, for the human sake, I hope not, because if he stays there, there will be much more bloodshed, and so many thousands or maybe millions of people will die. Those people are unusual people. When they say they will die, they will die. But let's say this way, those are not the true people, and they're not the true Iranian people. True Iranian people are the millions behind scenes, but they just don't have guns in their hand to try to do something about it. And the person who does not have guns or force in his hand, what chance or choice do they have?
Thank you. Davis, please call your home. It is an emergency. Lady Davis, please call your home. Dr. S34, please call your exchange. S34, please call your exchange.
Since 1961, when the Elks bought the old Federal Project building and renovated it into a facility for the handicapped, the organization has annually honored the state's leader. This year, Governor Fob James returned, talking about the group's efforts to improve life.
And this, in my humble opinion, creates strong hope within the people that come here. And without that, all the facilities and custodial care and treatment that could possibly be provided isn't going to be effective.
James also told the crowd one of his most familiar themes, that government is responsible only to the people. He encouraged them to check up on the people on the Hill and take an active interest in what measures are enacted into law. State government agencies work hand in hand with the Elks facility in North Montgomery to help those with physical and mental handicaps. And today, Elks lodges from across the state made further efforts to assist all Alabamians in a productive life. Paul Roth, WSFA TV News.
Charles Gregory, Jr. today turned himself in at about 11 o'clock. And the detectives who were working the case were called in and they processed him through. He's currently in city jail right now.
Can you tell me what he's charged with?
Presently, he's charged with first-degree burglary, assault to murder, and rape.
Any idea why he turned himself in?
No, I didn't question him. The detectives that were working it, that would be Detective Rambo and Detective Hankins, took care of all of that.
After the arrest of Rosa Parks for violating the city's segregated seating law, thousands of blacks gathered at the Mount Zion AMEZ Church to begin a bus boycott and to organize the Montgomery Improvement Association. The theme for the 24th anniversary celebration is preparation for the 80s, economically, legally, politically, and educationally. Mrs. J.R. Carr, president of the Montgomery Improvement Association, spoke of the great task which still remains. She said, "We realize we have come a long way, but we still have a long, long way to go." According to Mrs. Carr, the Montgomery Improvement Association is concerned with politics, housing, jobs, police brutality, and discrimination in any form. Reverend Leonard Duncan, a Montgomery minister, was the featured speaker. The association also announced the recipients of its annual scholarship awards. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News.
Didn't know what Ray said that the pamphlet of this is not really be too popular, and I told him the reason is it's too long. Nobody wants to read that much.
When Southeastern Conference schools released their names of football signees this weekend, the name of Linzel Chapman was nowhere to be found. Oh, his statistics were impressive enough, and if you don't believe he's a good defensive end, just take a look at number 88 give a textbook lesson in tackling on this play. However, college scouts say he's too small to play football. At 6'4", 190 pounds, he is a little on the skinny side by major college standards, but Enterprise coach Bill Bacon says his star pupil still has some growing left.
Linzel is a super football player. I think somebody's missing the boat on him. He's doesn't weigh that much, but he's got exceptional height, and I hope he can go to as big a school as he possibly can. There are some small colleges that will take him, but I think he's a sleeper. I think 2 years from now, he'll be 215 or 220 and be some kind of super football player because he's got good height, and he's just a heck of a player.
You've had him going both ways here.
Well, we play him in spots on offense. He is a defensive end, but he's also a pretty good tight end. We've thrown to him a lot this year, and he's just come through for us and never what we asked him to do.
The college scouts may believe Linzel Chapman is too small to play football, but scouts have been wrong before. After all, Enterprise was supposed to have a poor football team this year, and we all know how that story ended. Fred Albers, WSFA TV Sports.
We confiscated 165 hits of LSD, phencyclidine, and marijuana. And we have 3 black males from a motorcycle gang known as the Outcasters in custody, and they are Charles Kemp, black male, age 36, Robert Pennick, black male, age 34, and Eric Adams, black male, age 35. They are in the city jail at the present time on the $50,000 bond.
You want sound?
Oh!
As of today, we have been unsuccessful, and for that reason, I've instructed the attorney representing the finance department to file one last notice, last letter with those companies, and without any other action on their part, if they do not pay the penal sums, then to commence legal action by December the 17th.